When a black waitress spotted a frail boy in a wheelchair shivering in the rain, she didn't hesitate. She brought him inside, fed him, and made him feel safe. But she didn't know. A billionaire was watching her every move from across the street. Stay tuned to see how one small act of kindness would change her life in ways she never imagined. The rain came down in relentless sheets, turning the cracked sidewalks of Atlanta into a slick, treacherous mess. It was past closing time at Marley's Diner, and most of the staff had already left, eager to escape the storm. But Jasmine Turner was still inside, wiping down the counter after a grueling 12-hour shift. She should have been out the door by now. But exhaustion never dulled her kindness, and that's why, when she glanced out the window and saw a frail boy in a wheelchair, shivering under the dim glow of the neon Marley's Diner sign, she froze. The boy looked no older than 10, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his tiny fingers gripping a thin, frayed blanket. His coat was too light for this weather, barely shielding him from the cold. Who would leave a child out in this? Jasmine tossed the rag onto the counter and moved. The diner door creaked open, the freezing wind hitting her instantly. "Hey, sweetie," she called out gently, crouching beside him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy flinched at first, his blue eyes wide and uncertain, like he wasn't sure if he should answer. I'm waiting for my dad," he mumbled, barely audible over the rain. Jasmine looked up and down the street. No one, not a single soul except for the glow of a pawn shop's Cash for Gold sign flickering across the road. The sound of distant tires hissing against wet asphalt was the only response. "Where is he?" she asked, concern creeping into her voice. The boy shrugged, curling the thin blanket tighter around himself. Jasmine exhaled, pressing her lips together. She had seen too many nights like this, too many kids left waiting for someone who wasn't coming. And she wasn't about to let this one sit out here, cold and hungry, if she could help it. "Well, you can't stay out here, not in this mess." She smiled. "Come inside with me, okay? It's warm, and I've got something special for you." For a second, the boy hesitated, but then, slowly, he nodded. Jasmine carefully took hold of the wheelchair's handles and pushed him inside. The warmth of the diner wrapped around them instantly, along with the familiar scent of buttered toast and coffee. She wheeled him over to a booth near the radiator, draping a fresh towel over his shoulders before crouching to meet his eyes. "I'm Jasmine," she said with a warm smile. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The boy sniffed, curling his fingers around the edge of the blanket. "Oliver." Jasmine nodded approvingly. "That's a strong name. You hungry?" Oliver hesitated, then nodded again. She didn't wait for him to say more. She was already moving toward the kitchen, pulling out a fresh loaf of sourdough, slicing it with practiced ease. Within minutes, she set a steaming plate in front of him, grilled cheese, golden and crisp, with a bowl of tomato soup on the side. Her grandmother used to make this when the world felt too cruel. "This one's on me," she said, tucking a napkin into his lap. Oliver's blue eyes widened as he took his first bite. The cheese stretched in gooey strings, and his face lit up. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he murmured, voice laced with pure wonder. Jasmine chuckled, watching him devour the sandwich. "Good food makes everything better," she said lightly. But inside, something ached, because she knew what it looked like when a kid was used to being hungry. And what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that someone was watching. Across the street, a sleek black Rolls-Royce sat idle in the shadows, its tinted windows reflecting the diner's neon glow. Inside, Nathan Caldwell sat in silence, his sharp gray eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before him. At 46 years old, Nathan was a man who had built an empire on control, a tech giant worth billions. He didn't believe in sentiment. He believed in power, efficiency, ruthlessness. And yet, here he was, watching, listening, thinking, because the boy in that booth was his son. And the black waitress in the cheap apron who just fed him for free? She had no idea that her small act of kindness was about to open doors she never imagined possible. And Nathan? He wasn't sure whether he liked that. But one thing was clear, Jasmine Turner had just changed everything. Jasmine was wiping the last bit of tomato soup off Oliver's chin when the diner door swung open. The cold night air rushed in first, followed by a woman in jeans and a hoodie, her blonde hair tucked beneath a faded Braves cap. Something about her was off. It wasn't the way she dressed. Plenty of people walked in looking like that. No, it was the way she carried herself. Sharp, calculated, like she had already sized up the entire room before stepping inside. Jasmine had worked in enough places, seen enough people to know someone who wasn't here for the coffee. The woman's gaze landed on Oliver immediately. She softened her expression, crouching beside him, too smooth, too rehearsed. "Hey, champ, time to go," she said lightly. Oliver frowned, his small fingers tightening around the edge of his napkin. Jasmine wiped her hands on her apron, folding her arms as she studied the woman. "You know him?" she asked casually. The woman's smile didn't falter, but her shoulders stiffened. A subtle flicker of hesitation. "Yeah," she said smoothly. "I'm his aunt." Jasmine didn't blink. She turned to Oliver. "That true, sweetheart?" Oliver hesitated, just a second too long. Jasmine felt it in her gut. This wasn't his aunt. The woman, whoever she was lying. Oliver swallowed, glancing at Jasmine, then at the woman. "She's here for my dad," he mumbled. "I guess I have to go." Jasmine didn't move. She had been in this exact moment before. She had seen too many people dismissed, erased, shuffled off without a second thought. She could push, demand more. But she also knew how this went. A black woman pressing too hard, asking too many questions, getting the wrong kind of attention. She knew exactly how that ended. Jasmine's jaw tightened. She had no power here. But she could still do something. She turned, walked to the counter, and grabbed a chocolate chip cookie, wrapping it in wax paper. She slid it into Oliver's small hands. "For the road," she said softly. Oliver's fingers curled around it, and for the first time that night, he smiled. "Thanks, Jasmine. You're the best." Jasmine forced a small smile, but her chest felt tight. As the woman wheeled Oliver toward the door, a quiet tension settled between them. And just before stepping out into the rain, the woman glanced back. She didn't say anything. She just looked at Jasmine, and Jasmine recognized it for what it was, a warning. The Rolls-Royce's headlights flashed as the woman approached. The rear door swung open before she could knock, and Nathan Caldwell stepped out. His broad figure was framed by the glow of the diner's neon sign, his gray eyes cold and unreadable. The moment Oliver was safely inside, buckled into the back seat, Nathan turned to the woman. "Well?" The woman, Leah Foster, exhaled, pushing back her hood. "She clocked me," Leah admitted. "Didn't buy the aunt story. Almost called me out on it." Nathan's expression didn't change. "But she let him go," Leah added quickly. "She didn't have a choice. You know how it is. A black woman making a scene? She'd be the one in trouble, not me." Nathan's jaw twitched, but he said nothing. Leah folded her arms. "She's not like the others," she said. Nathan already knew that. He had seen it the moment Jasmine stepped into the rain without hesitation. The way she had spoken to Oliver, like he mattered, not like he was an inconvenience. He had spent his entire life watching people bend, flatter, manipulate for his money. But Jasmine? She didn't even know who Oliver's father was. And she had helped anyway. That made her dangerous. Nathan reached for his phone, dialing. "Nora," he said when his assistant picked up. "I need a full background check on someone. Name Jasmine Turner, Atlanta. Find out everything you can and send it to me by morning." A pause. "Sir?" Nathan's voice was quiet, unshakable. "I need to know who she is," he said, "and what she wants." He ended the call. Leah raised an eyebrow. "That necessary?" Nathan slid into the back seat beside Oliver. "I don't believe in kindness," he said simply, fastening his seatbelt. "I believe in debts." Leah hesitated. "And you think you owe her something?" Nathan looked out the window. Jasmine Turner had no idea what she had just walked into, but she was about to find out. Jasmine had barely kicked off her shoes when a knock echoed through her tiny apartment. She froze. No one knocked on her door this late. A slow, uneasy feeling crawled up her spine as she stepped toward the peephole, and when she looked through it, her stomach dropped. A man in an expensive black coat stood outside, broad-shouldered, immovable. His gray eyes were sharp, assessing, cold as steel. He didn't belong here. Not in this building, not in this part of the city. Not in her world. Jasmine kept her hand on the lock. "Who is it?" A pause. Then, Nathan Caldwell. The name meant nothing to her. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady. Another pause. Then, quieter, controlled. "To talk." Jasmine's gut screamed, hell no. But curiosity won out. Slowly, she unlatched the door, opening it just enough to see him clearly. Nathan didn't flinch. I don't know you, Jasmine said flatly. No, he agreed. But you know my son. Her pulse skipped. Oliver. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. She studied the man carefully, the way his coat was still damp from the rain. But his shoes were spotless. This wasn't just money. This was power, the kind that could break people without ever lifting a hand. Oliver, she said slowly. You're his father? Nathan's nod was barely perceptible. I was across the street last night, he said. The chill that had settled in her bones turned sharp. You were watching. I was. Jasmine exhaled through her nose. So what? You here to complain that I fed your kid? Nathan's gaze flickered, unreadable. No, he said simply. Then, before she could respond, he pulled an envelope from his coat and placed it on her rickety kitchen table. Jasmine didn't move. She glanced at the envelope. Thick, expensive. The kind of paper that had weight. The kind of paper that meant whatever was inside wasn't small. She swallowed. What is that? Nathan's voice was even, unshakable. A job offer. Jasmine blinked. A what? A job. At Caldwell Industries. 6 figures, benefits, the works. For a second, Jasmine's brain stalled. Then she laughed. A sharp, incredulous sound. You think I want to work for some rich white man who thinks handing out a check makes us even? Nathan didn't flinch. I don't think you want charity, he said. That's why I'm not offering it. Her name in his mouth made something tighten in her chest. You don't even know me. Nathan held her gaze. I know enough, he said. I know you gave my son food without expecting anything in return. I know you didn't treat him like an inconvenience. And I know that's rare. Jasmine swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way his words knocked something loose in her ribs. She looked back at the envelope, at the ridiculous weight of it sitting on her table. And what exactly would I be doing at Caldwell Industries? Making coffee? For the first time, Nathan's mouth twitched. Something like amusement. But it vanished just as fast. No, he said. You'd be working directly with me, handling negotiations, public relations. You're good with people. I need someone like that. Jasmine snorted. You don't need me, she said. You've got a company full of Ivy League grads who'd slit each other's throats for a job like that. Nathan's expression finally shifted, just slightly. That's exactly why I don't trust them. Silence stretched between them. Heavy, waiting. Jasmine could feel the weight of his offer pressing against her, curling around the edges of her pride, her exhaustion. 6 figures. 6 figures meant no more late rent, no more paycheck to paycheck, no more nights wondering how to stretch her last $20. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Never owe these people anything, baby. You know they don't give without taking. Jasmine's jaw clenched. Why me? For the first time, something flickered in Nathan's eyes. Because you saw my son, he said, voice lower now. Like it almost cost him something to say. Not my money, not my name. You saw him. Jasmine's throat tightened. She looked at the envelope one last time. Then, slowly, she picked it up. I'll think about it, she murmured. Nathan studied her for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. Good. And just like that, he turned and left. Jasmine stood there long after the door shut, the envelope in her hands feeling heavier than it should. Because deep down, she already knew. She wasn't just thinking about it. She was going to say yes. Jasmine stepped into Caldwell Industries, feeling the weight of every gaze on her, not curiosity, judgment. She ignored it, kept her head high, walked straight to the elevator. Inside, Nathan sat behind a sleek desk, eyes on his tablet. Without looking up, he said, You're late. Jasmine folded her arms. By 2 minutes. Now, he looked at her. That's 2 minutes I don't get back. She sighed, already tired. You want me here or not? Nathan leaned back slightly. That remains to be seen. The door opened before Jasmine could fire back. Leah Foster stepped in, tablet in hand, voice smooth. Miss Turner, welcome to Caldwell Industries. Jasmine didn't miss the way Leah barely glanced at her before turning to Nathan. I prepared the reports for Orion Group. Nathan took the tablet without a word. Leah continued. Would you like me to brief her on company protocols? Nathan didn't look up. No, I will. Leah gave a small nod, then paused at the door. With one last glance at Jasmine, she murmured, "Good luck." It didn't sound like encouragement. Nathan slid a file across the desk. Orion Group wants to outsource jobs overseas. Jasmine flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing. That means layoffs, thousands. Nathan's voice remained steady. "I want you to do what you do best." Jasmine leaned back. "Charm them into growing a conscience?" Nathan didn't blink. "No. I hired you because you understand something they don't." She tilted her head. "And what's that?" Nathan leaned in slightly. "That people who have nothing to lose fight the hardest." Jasmine held his gaze. For the first time, she understood. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a challenge, and she wasn't about to lose. The conference room was colder than the rest of the building. Jasmine sat beside Nathan at the long mahogany table, across from three suited executives who barely acknowledged her. The leader, Gerald Langston, didn't bother looking up as he flipped through his notes. His voice was smooth, casual. "We're here to discuss the transition. I assume Caldwell Industries understands this is purely a financial decision." Nathan didn't flinch. "You mean gutting an American workforce?" Langston offered a thin smile. "Nathan, it's not personal. It's just business." Jasmine heard those words before, when her landlord raised rent overnight, when her mother lost her job at the textile plant, when powerful men made decisions that ruined lives, and called it strategy. She leaned forward, voice steady. "Funny. It's always just business, until it's your job on the line." Langston's eyes snapped to her. Nathan said nothing. He was watching, waiting. Jasmine slid a document across the table. "This is a breakdown of what happens when you offshore production." Langston barely glanced at it. "Miss Turner, I don't." Jasmine didn't let him finish. "You cut costs now, but in 3 years, labor demands rise. Suddenly your cheap workforce isn't so cheap anymore. You'll spend millions restructuring, rehiring, and handling PR disasters when the headlines read." She tapped the document. "American workers betrayed for profit." Langston's jaw tightened. The other executives exchanged glances. For the first time, they were actually reading the numbers. Jasmine didn't blink. "This isn't a guess. It's market analysis. So tell me, Gerald, how do you plan to explain this to your investors when your short-term win costs them their long-term returns?" Silence. Langston picked up the document. "Read it." For the first time, his confidence wavered. Nathan didn't smile, but Jasmine could feel the shift in the room. Langston set the document down, voice clipped. "We'll revisit the proposal." Nathan gave a short nod. "See that you do." The meeting ended. As Langston and his associates left, Jasmine felt Nathan's gaze on her. She turned to him. "Well?" Nathan studied her for a moment. Then, voice even, "I knew I hired you for a reason." Jasmine smirked. "Damn right you did." And for the first time since walking into Caldwell Industries, she felt like she belonged. Months passed since the Orion Group showdown, the meeting where she made it clear that her voice, her presence, was not to be ignored. That day, she hadn't just won a negotiation. She had cemented her place in a world that was never meant to welcome her. Nathan had been right about one thing. She was a fighter, and she had nothing to lose. Jasmine stood at the edge of a crowded auditorium, watching as Oliver Caldwell rolled his wheelchair across the stage, his diploma clutched tightly in his hands. She smiled, remembering the frail, shivering boy outside the diner that night, the way he had clutched that grilled cheese like it was the best meal of his life. Now that same boy was grinning from ear to ear, his face filled with a confidence that had once been buried beneath doubt. He reached Nathan first, shaking his father's hand. Then his eyes found her. He rolled toward her, holding up the diploma like a trophy. "Told you I'd make it." He beamed. Jasmine folded her arms, feigning skepticism. "I don't know, kid. Pretty sure I said it first." Oliver laughed, tilting his head. "Are you guys gonna hug or something?" Nathan sighed. "Absolutely not." Jasmine scoffed. "God, no." Oliver just smirked, shaking his head. "You two are impossible." Jasmine only smiled, but something settled in her chest. Because this, not boardrooms, not billion-dollar deals, was what mattered. Years later, Jasmine stood in front of a new glass door, one that now bore her name. Jasmine Turner, Vice President, Corporate Strategy. She traced the letters for a moment, letting it sink in. Under her leadership, Caldwell Industries had changed. Ethical labor policies expanded. New mentorship programs launched. Partnerships with minority-owned businesses flourished. And today, she wasn't just standing in an office. She was standing at the grand opening of the Turner Caldwell Foundation, a new initiative dedicated to funding education and job opportunities for underserved youth. The press had shown up, investors had flown in, and speeches were being made. But Jasmine wasn't listening. Her focus was on one person. Standing beside her, now a college freshman, was Oliver, the boy she had once fed for free, now standing tall, ready to shape his own future. He nudged her elbow. "So, VP Turner, how's it feel?" Jasmine exhaled, glancing at the foundation's sign, her name next to the Caldwell legacy. She had spent so much of her life fighting to survive. Now, she was building something that would outlast her. She smiled. "Feels like just the beginning." Because kindness, that was the kind of investment that always paid off. In a world driven by power and wealth, it's easy to believe that only the strongest survive. That success belongs to those who play by the rules of privilege, influence, and strategy. But Jasmine Turner's story proves something different. Sometimes it's not power that changes lives. It's kindness. One simple act, one meal, one moment of genuine care can set off a ripple effect greater than we ever imagined. Jasmine didn't seek recognition. She didn't help Oliver for a reward. She simply did what was right. And in return, life opened doors for her that she never thought possible. Have you ever experienced a moment where a small act of kindness changed your life, or someone else's? Drop your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it today. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Your support makes these stories possible, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, keep spreading kindness.